Hi, everybody. Welcome to Beaverton City Library. Thanks for coming out tonight. Appreciate it. It's a nice night out there. I realize it's tempting to go run through the fountain, but it's nice in here too. So, my name is Blaine Ross. I work here at the library, and I do a lot of storytelling events here. And this is a special one because it's Welcoming Week. And are people familiar with Welcoming Week? A little bit, kind of, sort of. Well, it's an annual campaign that celebrates the work in communities to become welcoming places for all, including immigrants, especially immigrants. And launched in 2012, Welcoming Week provides individuals and organizations the opportunity to showcase their values through events, initiatives that foster connections and collaboration between immigrants and non-immigrants, as well as belonging for us all. So I think we can all agree that we need a lot of that right now. So thank you for coming. I want to say a couple quick thank yous before we get started. A big thank you to Sara Houranpay of the Immigrant Story. He has a great organization, and he has found all these tellers here. He has a great portfolio of tellers, and he got his start right here, and now he's so big he can't even do it here anymore. He does shows at the Reeser and downtown, and they have music, and they're amazing, and all of these tellers have been on those shows. And I do recommend, if you get a chance, to go see one. They're really incredible, and they're free. So if you don't know anything more about him, go to his website, Immigrant Story, and learn some more and see when the next show is. I know they just had one. So, and then also a big thank you to the city of Beaverton, especially Kenya Williams, Paolo Esteban, and Caitlin Brown. They're at the Office of Equity Inclusion, and all the other folks of the city who've helped make this possible. Thanks to our library volunteers. We got a couple here tonight. They help so much with all the library events we do. Yeah, give them a round of applause. You can clap for yourselves back. And then we also have Sarah Lockhart with Southwest Indivisible out there. I don't know if you got a chance to talk to her. They help people find out what their rights are. So if you get a chance, check in with them. We do have surveys out there. If you want to fill out a survey about the program or anything else, I love your feedback. And I also have my business card out there. You're also welcome to email me. You can ask to be put on the storytelling list on the survey or send me an email. If you already are on the email list, you don't need to ask again. So there's that. And then just a quick mention, the final event of Welcoming Week is this Sunday. And it's here in the auditorium. It starts at 1 o'clock. And it is featuring a cultural Chinese performance from Hayam Ballet and traditional Persian music from Maestro Saleh and Art Max. So that promises to be a really good show too. So if you get a chance, come see that. Starts at 1. Okay, with all that being said, I want to welcome our first teller to the stage. Nasirullah Safi is a former U.S. military combat interpreter, author, and community advocate. He is the author of 3 books, Get the Terp Up Here, Indispensable, and 1,000 Miles to Freedom, which is coming out very soon. He's a former U.S. military interpreter. He now serves as a case manager with Salem for Refugees and works as a traditional health worker, supporting families as they adjust to new lives in Oregon. Through his writing, speaking, and service, Nasirullah shares powerful stories of resilience and serves as a bridge between cultures, communities, and generations. Please welcome to the stage Nasirullah Safi. Stand here and make sure I get the.
But it's probably getting out. No, you good. Well, thank you. Oh, thank you, everyone, and good evening. It's just such an honor to be here and share my story with you. And thank you, Blaine, for having me. As I mentioned, my name is Nasirullah Safi, and I'll try to remember my whole story because I did have a little bit of driving down from Salem, and the traffic was not too good, as you all know. So I grew up in a small village. I'm going to take this off. Yeah. So I grew up in a small village in the Kunar Valley of northeastern Afghanistan. The valley is beautiful. When I talk about the valley, you may think about the Willamette Valley with the beautiful mountains and the river. So the valley is beautiful with the mountains rising on both sides and the Kunar River flowing to join the Kabul River. different tribes have been farming this land for generations. If you take a picture, it looks so peaceful. But peace has been an illusion for everybody. That was something everybody has been wanted for decades. Actually, throughout the history, peace has been written in blood, not just in my birthplace, but in an entire country. My father's generation saw constant fights between the Afghan communists, backed and supported by the Russians on one side, and so-called freedom fighters or holy fighters, backed and supported by the Americans. At the same time, extremists from the Arab world and Pakistani, along with the Pakistani Taliban, came in and fought their own battles in our villages. When I was born, the Russian jets had been driven out of the country, and American were also gone. But the fighting, the bloodshed, and the war continued. Even we children always knew that the firefight could still break out at any moment. We might be walking to school or sitting in the class outside in the school courtyard. Whenever the fighting started, we might be running, trying to find a cover, and our older siblings would be running around, trying to find their little ones. Where's my brother? Where's my sister? And yet, I had a happy childhood. Growing up with 3 brothers and 4 sisters, I would help collect firewood after school and do chores for mama, and then do play with other kids in the street. When I was only 7, the Taliban, the same people, they took over our country back in 2021. I'm sure you guys have seen the news, still following the news. Came over and took over our country. We thought they would bring peace, and we even called them white angels, a term that we use. Spin malaiki, you guys can remember those words. Because they all came in big trucks, holding weapons, wearing robes, flying white flags with the written words on it from the first pillar of Islam: there is no God but God, and Muhammad is the messenger of God. But they brought fear. The same people who returned to power after 20-some years twisted so-called Sharia law to suit their own agenda, creating a lawless and a brutal regime, demanding people to feed them, even though we barely had enough to survive. They banned girls from learning and from going to school, not decades ago, but it's still happening. Women and girls are still not allowed to go to school. They're not allowed to work. I saw the lights in my sister's and my mother's eyes fade away. They were all trapped in our house. Everyone was scared to leave the house and face the wrath of the Taliban. The same people are back, and they're even worse this time. They call it 2.1 or 0. The new version of the Taliban, we thought they would be better, but they're worse. When we heard about 9/11 or September 11, just a couple days ago, we did not know much about America. But what I noticed, just like everyone else, there was celebration. There was firing into the sky. That's how we celebrate certain things. And there were sweets handed out. The mastermind, the person who did it, claimed or happened to be in the country. Many people supported him. And sooner, we heard the American planes dropping bombs. Those bombs were very strong. I remember those bombs would shake our entire village. One bomb fell very close by, and it shook our entire village. We all thought there was an earthquake, but it wasn't. Those big bombs that it dropped. At the end of that year, the Americans came in and took over our country. There was no peace. Sooner, the Taliban regrouped, and what they did was they turned worship centers such as mosque into recruiting center and using their propaganda to recruit and hire more people to fight against the Americans, what they call it the Holy War or Jihad. That was going on for a while. One day, I learned about one of the families, my best friend, one of the kids that I was going to school with, they were brutally murdered. My mom told me not to go to their house, but we were kids. I went anyway. When you're a teenager, when you're young, you never listen to your mom, your parents. I regret it. Until teenagers, don't do that. Because I've done it. I went in, and what I saw was indescribable. There was blood everywhere. The whole house, the whole walls, scented with blood. My friend was killed. His mom was killed. His sister was killed. His grandmother was killed. And his uncle, they were all brutally killed. And the word was that they were spying for the Americans. In fact, they never worked for the Americans. Some of the family members worked for the local government. But that was the word, that was the label that the Taliban, along with other insurgents, would use to kill whoever they wanted to kill. But at the same time, some American soldiers were coming to our villages. They were coming to town. They were coming to school. We did not have buildings for school. There were a few tents. That's where we were studying. But when the Americans started coming to our villages, our towns, they started bringing school supplies, bringing books, notebooks, including candies that we didn't have it. I was a country boy, grew up in country. I was fascinated by everything that they were doing. They were building schools, they were building hospitals, they were building clinics, they were building roads. So I wanted to learn English. I just wanted to be one of the interpreters who stood beside American soldiers. Couldn't speak English. It was pretty hard. Couldn't find anybody. We didn't have good access to education. And then after the incident that we lost, that the whole family was brutally murdered, we decided to leave because I would hang out with American soldiers wherever I could find in town. I would skip school. Mom or parents could never find out that I went to school or I spent the whole day with soldiers just to communicate with them by just using body language. I couldn't understand their accent. I didn't know how to communicate with them, but I was always there, just communicating with them through body and gestures. But when we moved to Jalalabad, it was a bigger city. Just imagine a family who grew up in a country. It's a country boy, grew up with animals. That's what we're doing. Life was extremely hard for us. The whole adjustment was hard for us. We couldn't believe we had never been to the big city, and the life and everything. There were some good things, I would say. We're able to watch TV once in a while. I can buy a store or a restaurant, we can see there's a TV. I did not know anything about TV when I was back in the country. There was no cell phone and nothing. But there were some things that we never wanted and we're not ready for it. We have to pay bills, we have to pay rent. Or at least in the country, we don't have to pay for firewood because I could find them wherever I could go. But in the city, we couldn't make big fire, we had to be careful. Life was extremely hard. There were days that we had breakfast, but we didn't have food for lunch. Or if we had lunch, we did not have food for dinner. My parents were old to work. And my brothers and we all wanted to find something, but it was hard for us. The very first thing for us to learn how to live in a city, that was our struggle. Work was something we wanted to, but nobody wanted to hire us because we're not from the city, we're country people. And then one day I heard one of my brothers, who said oh, I'm gonna open up a samovar, which is a kind of coffee shop thing that we all have here, but totally different. A small coffee shop, I would say, right outside in the open, no shelter and nothing. And it's kind of different. Like, we already had delivery system, and that was me. I was the delivery guy. After school, we had this small samovar thing right outside in the open. If it would have rained, like, me and my brother would be standing there shaking because we didn't have any shelter. We couldn't afford to rent a place or something. And then I was the one after school, like, delivering tea, like in a small kettle with a few cups and some sugars, shop to shop, store to store. And you guys, if you guys familiar with that kind of culture, so that's what we do. It was a good and a bad experience. I heard things from people, like they asked me to hang out with them. I was too young and asked me a lot of weird questions. But we continued. We didn't have any other option because it was a survival thing for us. We really wanted to do something so we can support ourselves and we can feed ourselves. You know, we struggle pretty much with everything. While I was working with my brother, I heard about jobs that the Americans were looking to hire people as an interpreter. I couldn't speak very good English, but when we're in Jalalabad, a bigger city, I had access to some English classes at school. There were more English classes, and I really wanted to learn English. I just really wanted to. And I could speak a little bit. I could communicate a little bit, just to say hi and what's up, just from my side, but I still couldn't understand the accent. We'll tell you about that too. I was pretty young, and I really wanted to do something for my family because they could everything. They wanted. I mean, my parents, wanted to help us, and they could everything to support us. But there was time that they couldn't do anything about it because they were old for their age or for the culture. So I lied to my mom one morning, and she thought that I was going to school, but I wasn't because I heard about those jobs, and I just wanted to give it a shot. I wanted to be an interpreter. Just like I said, I wanted to be someone who could stand beside American soldiers. So I skipped the school. I didn't go to school. I went to a U.S. military base, which was about 2.5, 3 miles away. I was young, and I walked all the way to the base. But I did not know until I got there that you had to be 18 to become an interpreter. I did not think about that thing. Like in our country, you could be anything at the age of 10, 12, 11, right? Nobody asked you. So when I got there, I was super excited. My family did not know where I was and what I was planning to do. Mom's still thinking that I was at school because she knew that I wanted to be a medical doctor. And that's what I told. I was still in my family. I was a little bit, I was good at biology at school, so that's what I wanted to be. Mom was sick too. So when I got to the military base, they looked at my birth certificate, what we call it, tazkira or identification card, unlike like Oregon ID. It's just a piece of paper, and anybody can make it. Just a piece of paper, just a piece of paper. There's no electronic record or anything. So here I am, a teenager at the age of 14 or 15. I wish I could show you those pictures. Here I'm standing on the line waiting for them to ask me and says like, oh, we can hire you, and ask me a bunch of questions. I had no clue about the interview or any of those things. But I'm standing there, and all of a sudden this guy showed up with his interpreter, and when he looked at my paperwork, he smiled and said like, no, he was very nice. He was very nice. He didn't say anything else, but he said like, oh, you have many years to go. We can't help you. You're gonna have to come back many years later. I was very disappointed by that, very disappointed, because I wanted to do something for my family. I went back home, and Mom thought that I came back home from school, but she said, no, not that I never went to school. I skipped the whole day, and that's what I wanted. I wanted to get the job. But anyway, deaths, birth are negotiable in our country. Very negotiable. You probably think like, how? So what I did, I couldn't wait for many years. I couldn't wait until 18. That would be. I didn't know if you could survive for another like 5 or 6 years. So I waited for a few weeks, and then I went back with something surprising. Not even 18. It says like I was 19. I don't want to put 18 because you never know. I went back, and I don't know. That was a miracle, and I got the job. I don't know how I got it. I still I don't know. I still can't believe how I got it, and how did I pass the test? Like, I think, go back and think about it. Like, how did I do it? But you are like, good luck. I couldn't tell. So I got the job. Nobody knew except one of my brothers in the family. I went back, I was super excited. I didn't tell anyone because I knew that my parents would never let me because they wanted me to go to school to become a doctor. That's what my mom wanted to. She was pretty literate. She never went to school, even like me going to high school. And she thought like, oh, my son is becoming a doctor like after a few years because she didn't know that he had to go to college or university to become a doctor. So when I become a military interpreter, I was sent to the same place I was born. I was sent back to Kunar province. That was the place I was born. I was excited to go back. I didn't even think about the risk or any of those things, nothing. So I went back to Kunar province, where I was born, as an interpreter, as a youth military interpreter, and started working with the soldiers. It was a struggle at the very beginning. Like I said, I could communicate a little bit, but it was very hard for me to understand their accent. It's like, what is happening here? I took a bunch of English classes, but I still could not understand them because the accent was very difficult. And it was not just like one accent. I would say like I was working for somebody from Texas. So in the unit, you see like 30 or 40 people from like 20 or 30 different states. And my boss happened to be from upstate New York. And like, dude, what is happening? I couldn't understand him a word. Like, I did not know. So the first day that I had to go and introduce myself to the unit, and here I am, interpreter for the new unit that just got there. We knock on the door, and the same guy that I told you from upstate New York, a huge guy, man. I knew nothing about gym, but I learned later on that he was going to gym 3-4 times a day, and he was huge. Now he's coming out. He came out, and there was another interpreter who had been there longer. He could speak pretty good English. He was my interpreter, but I could speak a little bit. So in the introduction, he looked at me, and we started doing introduction. I could say that, like, hey, my name is Nasirullah Safi. And the sooner I say it, or the sooner that word came out of my mouth, like Nasirullah Safi, he looked at his platoon sergeant, Kevin Devine, who had been in the military already, like for 20-some years already. He had been to Iraq, Afghanistan. The platoon sergeant, the lieutenant was very new. He, West Point graduate, knew a little bit, but the platoon sergeant was very smart. He had been to Afghanistan before in Iraq. And he looked at his platoon sergeant and said, like, hell no. That's the words I remember when he said that. He said, like, can you say that again and say it slowly? I tried a few times, but he couldn't catch it. He still couldn't catch it. And he looked at his platoon sergeant and said, like, we got to do something about his name. And he's like, sir, what about John? And then he said, like, that sounds pretty good. Let's call him John. So John became my American name. So I had no clue what was going on, and I thought, like, now John is my name. They're going to be calling me John. So what about my birth certificate? Are they going to change it there too? Because I thought everything is negotiable with the Afghan culture, but I don't know about the Americans, if they can change my name on birth certificate. So I went back and talked to other interpreters. And they were like, no, like, don't worry about it. They're not going to change it on the paperwork. But from now on, they're going to call you John because it's much easier for them. And also, it's good for your family because, if you work and people find out, like the Taliban or the other insurgents find out what your real name is, then they will go after your family. I said, well, that's even better. I didn't even think about that. So when I started working as an interpreter, I didn't even think about the risk. I was more excited about the military trucks, the helicopters. I was like, couldn't wait to ride in those military trucks. And it's crazy that I didn't think about the risk, even physical risk and emotional. We were going out 2 or 3 times a day, 2 or 3 missions and patrols, and I was the first one there. If they would ask us to be there 8:30 in the morning, this guy was there at 8 o'clock, more excited to ride in these military vehicles. I couldn't even figure out how to close those doors, for the Humvee trucks that were very heavy. And even when there was any aerosol, that's what they call aerosol operations, like the helicopter operation, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be flying in those things. And whenever we had done those operations, I would call my family did you guys see those helicopters? I was in one of those. But they couldn't tell because there were so many helicopters flying. So I was more excited about that. And I left my whole family, and I, like everybody, like all the soldiers that I work with, they all think like I grew up with soldiers on the military base. But the place that I worked was very isolated behind enemy lines. We're vulnerable to enemy fires like ambushes, IEDs, provides explosive devices, VBAT, rockets. Our morning alert was not like a regular watch or clock. It was enemy rockets or mortars. That's what we're alarmed. We would wake up to that thing. And we're doing like 2 to 3 missions a day. We're going to village. I was always the first one to speak with the Afghans, with the locals. And I was the one filling that gap between two nations, the Afghan and American. I was translating not only word, but that word means the life and death. And I didn't think about the rest until I found out when I was shot myself. I was supporting the same unit in one of the patrols. That's when we came under attack. And I said to the last one of my brothers, Alexander Miller, and I still carry his bracelet here. I got shot on the right arm, and then a bunch of other soldiers got shot as well. We were lucky to survive, but we lost him. And we remember him every single day. An incredible young soldier. And then the rest didn't end there. The Taliban found out that I worked as an interpreter. They went after my family. One day I learned that they targeted my brother-in-law and his 7-year-old son. His son was extremely close to me. He was not only my nephew, he was my best friend. I would always bring him gifts and whatever I could. Then when I found out that he was brutally killed along with his father, it was horrible. And I couldn't even attend their funeral. But I continued to support my brothers and sisters in arms. And it was not too long after when I learned that my oldest brother, was hit by a bomb. He survived the bomb, but he carries more than 50 shrapnel in his body and the trauma that he's going through every single day. And a little after that, they targeted one of my sisters. My sister was shot multiple times in her abdomen. And we thought we lost her, but it was a miracle when she survived. As Blinn mentioned, my third book, 1,000 Miles to Freedom, is her story. And I'm super excited about that to come out. And I hope it will come out pretty soon. And I knew it when I was working as an interpreter that I would never make it out. I knew this. Every single soldier in every unit that I worked for, they all knew and they wanted to help me get out of there. They knew that I wouldn't make it because I was at the front line 24/7. So it took me 6 years, almost 7 years, to get out of there. The process was whoever worked for the Americans for 1 year, then they could become eligible to immigrate to the United States under the program they call a Special Immigrant Visa Program. And I was one of them. But for me, it took 7 years, almost 7 years to get out of there. And I remember when I received the email saying that your paperwork is done and you have a few days to pick up your visa. I could not believe, and I thought it was a dream. I had to check my email probably like 10, 20 times just to make sure it's not a spam or it's a real thing. And when I got my visa, I lost my sleeping. And I did not know what was going on, so I ended up calling my platoon sergeant, Kevin Devine, my best friend. And I told him, Sergeant, I don't know what is going on. Since I got my visa, I lost all my sleeping and I could not sleep. I don't know what's going on. What should I do? So he laughed at me and says, like, it's normal. I think you're just too excited to get out of there. So I made it out in 2016. But there's so many interpreters, so many people, so many folks who supported American soldiers, who made ultimate sacrifices. You know, a lot of my close friends who lost family members who were shot were left behind, and they're still trying to get out of there. But that hope is fading away because I don't even know if many of them would ever make it. So this is my story, and this was my journey from a tiny valley in northeastern Afghanistan to my forever home, Oregon. Again, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Nasirullah. Yeah. I mean, there are so many, we hear about it. There's so many people who are stuck there, and I hope someday we can get them out. So our next teller is Sara Houranpay. And hang on just a moment. I got to move a couple things here. You know, Nasirullah, in this country, people lie, the kids lie so they can get into the bars about their age. Sarah's a dedicated dental hygienist who immigrated from Iran with the vision of making a meaningful impact in her community and beyond. Deeply active in both the Iranian and immigrant communities, she advocates for accessible, affordable dental care for all, regardless of economic status. Her passion for service has taken her on numerous dental mission trips overseas, where she provides much-needed care in underserved regions. A leader in the dental field, Sara is also involved in various professional initiatives aimed at improving oral health outcomes globally. In addition to her work in dentistry, she serves on the board of a cancer charity, a cause close to her heart after losing her beloved grandmother to breast cancer. Currently writing her first book, she uses storytelling to inspire change and share her journey. With a TED Talk scheduled for next year, Sara continues to amplify her message of compassion, equity, and empowerment through health. Please welcome Sara Houranpay to the stage.
Thank you, everybody. I want to thank Blaine and his whole crew, first of all, for giving us this opportunity to share our stories, which means a lot. Mostly in the environment that we live in today, just supporting immigrants in general is another one of my passions, and thank you, Blaine, for that. And thank you, everyone, for coming and hearing our stories. I appreciate it. Before I begin, I want to dedicate this story to the immigrant kitchens that raised us, fed us, and continue to nourish this country in every sense of the word. To the hands that crossed oceans and borders, carrying spices, memories, and recipes like sacred heirlooms. To the food that speaks when words fall short. Food that says you are welcome, you are loved, you belong. This is for every immigrant whose flavors have changed the tables we gather around, not just with taste, but with generosity, resilience, and joy. This story is for you. My story is called The Smell of Cardamom. I don't remember the exact date we left Iran, but I do remember what we ate the night before. It was late winter. My grandmother made kebab, not just any kebab, kebab digi, the baked kind, layers of onion, spiced meat pressed into a pan like a savory cake. I didn't know it then, but she was cooking goodbye into it. Every layer, every sprinkle of sumac, every garlic toasted in ghee, her way of sealing a memory into something we could taste. I was 7 years old. When we arrived in the US, nothing smelled right. The air didn't carry cumin and fenugreek. There was no call for prayer in the evening, no pomegranate vendor yelling from the alleyway, no sekhavat, that beautiful Persian word for generosity that lives in every kitchen and in every teacup. We landed in a small town, Portland, where people had backyards and made burgers the size of their heads. At school, I opened my lunchbox and released what I thought was a scent of home. Warm bread with feta and olive oil. There was a boy that recoiled. He said, "What's that smell?" But the kids at the table just didn't have an understanding for it. They plugged their noses. I didn't answer. I just closed the lid. After that, I went home and I begged my dad for Lunchables. I wanted to blend in, be invisible. But food, our food, refused to stay quiet. It had a way of sneaking back into the room. Because in our culture, food isn't just food, it's biography. My father judged hummus by the swirl on top. If the olive oil wasn't pooled just the right way, it was considered an insult to chickpeas all over the world. My dad could tell who grew the parsley in our Shirazi salad by the way it snapped under his knife. Even when we were poor, and we were, there was enough for guests. Always tea, always coffee, always something baking. My parents worked at the restaurant, but come Saturday, we cooked like we were back home. At first, I hated it. I hated how our house always smelled different. My friends' houses smelled like Febreze. Ours smelled like garlic sizzling in olive oil, like cardamom and clove, like rose water. I thought it was too much. I thought we were too much. But food has a funny way of pulling you back in. One day, when I was 12, my father handed me the knife. And he said, "Come, help me make dolme kadu." That stuffed zucchini, slender green squash, hollowed out and filled with rice, lamb, and spices. It's a labor of love. You sit around a table with a bag and a tiny core, and you talk while you carve. I remember asking my father, "Why do we do things always the hard way? Why can't we make spaghetti?" He smiled. "Because," he said, "this is how you remember where you come from." I didn't get it then, but I cored the zucchini. I mixed the filling just right, salt, pepper, cinnamon, allspice. I rolled the grape leaves without tearing them. I kneaded the dough for shami. I even burnt my tongue tasting hot sugar syrup for the baklava. And somewhere between the garlic and the grape leaves, I found a version of myself that didn't need to fit in. I could be both, American and Iranian. I could speak English in the hallways and Farsi in the kitchen. I didn't have to choose. And slowly, food became my language of belonging. By middle school, I was the weird kid that would bring leftovers to school. And I'd say, "Here, try some of this. and I would push over some adas polo. And I'd get a look, and I'd say, it's just rice and lentils. Give it a shot. And they did, and they liked it. College is what really hit me. I moved to a small city, lots of cultures, lots of cuisines, but nothing tasted like home. So I did what I watched my father do. All those years, I cooked. At first, just for myself, then for my roommates. Then one day I hosted a Persian food night. In the dorm house, I made lubia polo, a layered dish with rice, lamb, fresh tomatoes, yogurt, and fried carrots. It was chaotic. I almost burnt the garlic. Someone asked me if they could put ketchup on it. I cried a bit inside, but I said, sure. That night, I realized something. Food wasn't just preserving my culture. It was translating it. And in that translation, something was born, not diluted, not erased, adapted. Today, I work in food, not as a chef, but as a writer. I tell stories about recipes, about immigrant kitchens, about the sacredness of small things, like how my grandmother used the back of a small spoon to crush her saffron to make Persian ice cream, or how a cup of Persian tea can stitch a heart right back into place. I visit home often. My father still makes kebab the same old-fashioned way, and we still argue if the rice has enough salt. But now, when I walk into that home and that smell hits me, it's not foreign anymore. It's mine. Sometimes I think about the boy in 5th grade, the boy that asked, "What's that smell?" I wish I had the words that I do now, because today I would say to that boy, looking at him eye to eye, that smell is history. It's survival. It's 1,000 years of grandmothers whispering recipes into dough with no measuring cups. It's every Friday lunch with my cousins crowded around a huge table. That smell is who I am. And you're lucky to be close enough to smell it. Food taught me that being from two places doesn't mean you're split. It means you carry double. Double the flavor, double the stories, double the soul. And now, when I open my lunchbox and that familiar scent drifts out of feta, lemon, garlic, I don't hide it. I take a bite, I smile, and I offer you some. Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Why am I so hungry? Oh, those are great smells. Why don't they make a Persian Febreze with all those smells? That would probably sell. Our next teller is Pham. He's a Portland-based writer, director, producer, and actor. A refugee from Vietnam, his work has been deeply influenced by personal and historical trauma, existential philosophy, and the transitory nature of life on the fringes. He has received grants from the Regional Arts and Culture Council, and his films have been exhibited by the Northwest Film Center, the Portland Institute of Contemporary Art, and national film festivals. His work and story have been featured on OPB's Oregon Art Beat and in other Portland press. In 2019, he was shortlisted for the Sundance Institute's Asian American Feature Film Fellowship. As an actor, he has had the honor of working alongside Harrison Ford, Jonathan Groff, and Corey Stoll. Most recently, he was the screenwriter and story producer of Pour the Water as I Leave, an animated hybrid documentary by Daniel Repas. The project was spotlighted at the 2021 and 22 Marche du Film. He's currently in post-production on his most personal project to date, his first documentary, Sea Rose Ashes. Please welcome to the stage Pham.
Thank you, Blaine. Thank you for being here this evening, everyone. My uncle once told me that what might have been our final night on Earth was a tableau of despair. All of us, except for me, since I was too young to know. But my mother, my aunts and uncles, and all 50-some of the other Vietnamese refugees that were squeezed into a tiny boat had resigned themselves to death in the South China Sea, nearly out of food, water, and fuel. Were it not for the profound serendipity of spotting an offshore oil rig on our 5th night, my brief life would have been one more endless offering to the depths. I was born in Saigon in 1975, the year South Vietnam fell to the communists. My father was a military officer in the South Vietnamese Army. When Saigon fell, he was incarcerated in a re-education camp. Life under the new regime was extraordinarily oppressive and bleak. And by the time I was 6, my mother and great aunt had made an impossibly fateful decision. We had to escape. So in 1981, under the cover of darkness, we fled in a craft that had been built to take the guise, of a commercial fishing boat. We sailed from the mouth of the Mekong River out into the South China Sea, aiming for Thailand. But nothing went as planned. We drifted, lost in the open sea. As everyone on the boat was saying their final prayers, suddenly a shimmering city of lights rose out of the ocean. In reality, we had encountered the offshore oil rig. We frantically sailed over to it and started screaming for help. The workers on the platform heard us and spotted our tiny vessel below. They put out an SOS call that reached a German freighter. Fortunately for us, this freighter had been sweeping the area for refugees as a part of an international rescue effort. So after surviving the impossible and being shuffled through refugee camps in Malaysia and the Philippines, we finally arrived in Portland later that year. In the strange Pacific Northwest coldness of November, we watched snowfall for the first time. Among the Vietnamese community was a fellow refugee that had arrived the year before us. He was affable, he was generous, eager to help, driving us around in his green Ford Mustang, translating for us, and essentially guiding us through our new world. Over time, he would become my mom's boyfriend, a father figure to me, and a friend to the family. My mother cleaned houses for money and took classes at Portland Community College. I started kindergarten and fell in love with apple juice and nap time, naturally. From the bedroom of our small apartment in Beaverton, I remember my mother recording herself onto cassette tapes, reading poetry, and sharing intimate thoughts with her sister. And although her lilting voice was mesmerizing, it resonated of sadness and loneliness. Eventually, the tapes would be sent home to our family as a part of her care packages. In the second year of our American experience, my mother began asking me repeatedly what I would do if she were to die. She asked it so calmly and casually that I never thought it to be peculiar. And each time she asked, it felt as if she was guiding me to the right answer. And I can't remember what I said at first, but slowly the seeds took root, and her words settled in my mind, repeated like a series of devotional mantras. Would you write letters home to your aunt and grandmother? Yes, Mama. I would write lots of letters. Would you send money home to help the family? Yes, Mama. I would send $100,000 million. And when you're older, would you bring them to America? Yes, Mama. I would bring our family to America. Only later did I realize these weren't simply questions. She was planning something else under the pretext of family loyalty. But she made it understood that these promises, like my nightly prayers, were sacred. At some point within the first year of meeting her boyfriend, the relationship dissolved. And I sensed my mother did not want him around, but somehow he convinced her that he was still an acceptable roommate, if not a family friend. But beneath the surface, there was a creeping tension that coiled tighter with time. On June 5th, 1983, my mother was murdered by the man who had once been her lover and a father figure to me. The same man who drove us to church and took my mother to work. That soft-spoken, easygoing man who took me to the park and taught me to fly a kite. The man who let me borrow his welding goggles, not knowing I would put them on to stare at the sun. Her tragic death shattered our community and froze me in time. One moment, I am a child answering my mother's questions with innocent certainty. The next, I'm orphaned, adrift in a world that suddenly felt hostile and alienating. I became a child, passed between hands, shuffled through the homes of relatives. By 16, I was homeless, sleeping at the airport, bus shelters, arriving to school early just to take showers. I fell and kept falling, and scattered behind me were the fragments of those sacred promises. I numbed myself with substances, chased pleasure as if it were salvation. I indulged in recklessness and in vanity. I broke myself against the world, searching for meaning in the wreckage. In the decades that followed, my passions would eventually find their way to filmmaking. And by the end of 2019, I should have been celebrating a career milestone, my first feature film. Instead, my world was turned upside down yet again. You see, I had fallen madly in love with another woman while still deeply in love with the one whom I had been with for more than 20 years. My latent adolescent mind buckled beneath this bewildering crossfire of emotions. Guilt, lust, love, longing. It was too much. And for the first time in my life, I had real thoughts of ending it all. So, in a desperate move, I let go. I walked away from both women. I left Portland and landed in Juneau, Alaska, 1,800 miles away. And then the pandemic hit. The world shut down. And suddenly, I'm stranded in a town of 30,000, hidden between the Gastineau Channel and endless forests and mountains. isolation wrapped around me. On long, aimless walks through the empty streets and along the silent boardwalk, memories surfaced. I thought of my mother and the father figure that took her life. I thought of her heartache and her sacrifices, and I remembered the mountains of love that poured out of her tiny body. And I realized the storm raging inside me was the same storm that had consumed her. And I was in the grip of sheer terror, terrified I would destroy myself, terrified I would destroy someone else, that I would, at some point, once again, fail to protect those whom I loved when they most needed me. But there was something else, something I had been avoiding. I needed to confront the man who caused this pain, to ask face to face why he did it, even if the answer was unbearable, even if there was no answer at all. The act of confronting him was the only way for me to reclaim the agency he had stolen from me as a child. Restorative justice. This was my path to redemption, and if he was willing, it could be his too. When I left Juneau in the fall of 2021, I knew what I had to do. I would return to Portland and begin the search for the man who murdered my mother and for the missing pieces of my past. This search became a 3-year journey that reconnected me with my community. Among them was my mother's sister in Vietnam, my aunt, my closest living blood relative. We spoke over video chat for the first time in 43 years since that fateful day when she saw us off on our boat odyssey into the South China Sea. After a few months of back and forth conversations, she asked me if there was any way that I could exhume my mother's remains from a cemetery in Portland. She wanted her cremated and brought home to be buried alongside our relatives and ancestors in Vietnam. After moving past the initial discomfort of the macabre, I committed to repatriating my mother's remains. I believe this is what she would have wanted, an act of loyalty and honor long overdue. In a way, it was an act of protection for her soul, something that I had been powerless to do for her body as a little boy. So, with assistance from the Oregon Department of Justice, we disinterred my mother's remains on August 15th, 2024. And for the first time since I fled Vietnam as a child, I returned with my mother. Her ashes now rest atop the headstone plaque of a monument in our hometown cemetery, less than 400 yards away from the house that she and I grew up in. This story is still unfolding, and my new film, that is the cinematic prism to the story, unfolds with it. Since my first video chat with my aunt, I've been able to send money home every month. And while the amount may seem small by American standards, in Vietnam, it has made a world of difference. She's built an outdoor patio at our family home, sought medical attention for long neglected issues. And my cousin, she has been able to add the most outrageous fairy tale wedding photos to her wedding memories. And I am proud to know I had a small part in making the other rural Vietnamese women in her neighborhood very jealous. As for the man who took my mother's life, that chapter remains unfinished. He has yet to respond to our requests to meet, And I'm working with Portland Community Justice Partnership in these efforts. But the process has been far more complicated than I ever anticipated. And so, after decades of forgetting, the little boy finally remembered the promises he made to his mother. 50 years after the fall of Saigon, a quiet redemption unfolds for me. Born into cycles of violence that bled from the open wounds of war, and later marked by a man still haunted by it, I inherited a momentum I did not choose, as no one does. Pain shaped me, and for a moment, I lived inside a design that has trapped so many others. In time and through compassion, I let go of the self that was a victim, and I climbed through the window of a prison that had always been open. I forgave others. I forgave myself. The wounds were never mine alone. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boo. I'm sure your mother would be very proud of you, is very proud of you. Okay, our final teller tonight is Dr. Shi Choong, and her story is one of resilience and determination. She has faced many challenges, including overcoming parental abandonment and starting anew in the U.S. Despite the odds, she earned her PhD in analytical chemistry from the nation's top program, Purdue University. During her doctoral journey, she discovered her passion for event planning as organizer and license holder for TEDx Purdue University. In 2024, she took a bold step by leaving her corporate job to fully embrace her love for event planning. Now, as the founder and CEO of Event Planner she has the freedom to create meaningful experiences. She has created Women Who Dare, a platform and movement dedicated to amplifying the voices of women who are dared to break barriers and embrace their authentic selves. Please welcome to the stage, Dr. Shi Choong.
Thank you, Blaine. Good afternoon. Growing up, I struggled deeply with how I look. My mother often told me I was ugly. She would say with disgust, "You look just like your father. You're so ugly. You're so ugly that I don't know what to do with you. I don't know how to dress you, and it's easier for me to dress you like a boy." My maternal grandmother said the same thing whenever she visited. So you can imagine, I had the same haircut and same clothes as my two younger brothers. I've never set foot in a salon until when I was 20s after I left home for college. Before then, my mother cut my hair in the bathroom with a razor blade. If you have never had your hair cut by a razor blade, well, let me tell you, it hurts. She'll grab a small section of my hair, press down, and slice. I could still feel the sting on my scalp. When we went out, it got worse. She dressed me in her own clothes. Now imagine this. A 12-year-old walking around in a 30-year-old blazer, pants, and dress. I looked ridiculous. I felt ridiculous, and most of all, I felt ugly. I remember when I was 8, my father bought me this magical gift of all, a shimmering white princess gown. That night, I dreamed of touring in this ruffle, feeling beautiful and alive. When I woke in the morning, my mother was holding the dress in one hand, another a pair of scissors. Before I could speak, she started cutting. She cut that dress into pieces right in front of me. I stood there frozen and I was in shock. And from that day on, I believe I didn't deserve beauty. I didn't deserve anything that makes me feel alive. 2 years later, when I was 10, my parents divorced. My mother, siblings, and I moved into the bare warehouse. We flattened cardboard boxes into beds. We put our clothes in a plastic bag and turned into our pillows. We picked up and ate wilted vegetables rejected by the market vendors from the street. By the time I was 15, both my parents have left, and I became the caretaker of my 3 younger siblings, aged 13, 11, and 8. I juggled 2 jobs and school. But somehow, I managed to stay at the top of my class. I became the model student and the leader of school prefects. A year later, my mother returned, and her boyfriend immediately saw that I was a gifted student. So he helped me get into school in Singapore, and from there, I worked my way to the United States for college. Even then, I still carry the old patterns in me. I wore oversized, baggy clothes that swallowed me whole. It was like I was trying to disappear. I could never forget that one day in the mall. Someone I knew stopped me at checked out. I was holding a double extra large hoodie and a pair of baggy jeans. She looked at me and asked, "Why are you covering yourself up? You are slim. You don't need to hide." And then she took me shopping. We grabbed clothes that actually fit. And she reminded me that I was a petite size 4. That moment cracked something open in me. Later, my college roommates took me to Sephora. We were playing with different colors of eyeshadow, lipstick, different foundation, experimenting like kids in the candy store. They even plucked my brows. I mean, they were pretty thick. They also introduced me to contact lenses. And for the first time, I was experimenting with fashion. I grew my hair long, wore bright lipsticks, thigh-high boots, and clothes that actually show my shape. And for the first time, I started discovering who I was. When I was 27, I went home, everything shattered. My mother grabbed me into the bathroom, and she shaved my long hair with a razor blade. Looking at my hair fall onto the floor broke me. 30 minutes later, I looked just like my 2 brothers again. In that moment, I told myself I will never go back to the place that makes me feel small, ugly, and unwanted. So I poured my energy into school, into work. I graduated college as a department honorary, earned my PhD in analytical chemistry from the nation's #1 program, and earned my position as a senior engineer at Intel. Thank you. From outside looking in, I had it all. The degree, the career, luxurious apartment, brand new car, organic groceries from Whole Foods, a flat screen TV. I mean, you know you made it when you are buying organic kales and have a flat screen TV, right? But inside, I felt small. I felt like I didn't belong. No matter how much I achieve, there is this quiet voice in me that whispers, "You are not enough." I look successful. I live with a constant weight that I was an imposter. And my family did not understand me either. Most of them barely went to school. My father is an orphan and illiterate. My mother finished her second grade education. Many of my classmates from childhood were married and have children. And here I was, in my 30s, still in school, still single, and still chasing after something they couldn't even name. By 40, it caught up with me. For 2 years, I struggled with body image. I could not look at myself in front of a mirror. I felt fat, ugly, unwanted, and not enough. Until one day, I told myself, enough. Well, universe listens and responds when you are ready. A photographer reached out to me, offering to take portraits for me. At first, I was shy, I was stiff, and soon I relaxed, had fun, and even brought my puppy Snowy with me. When I look at the photos, wow, I still look good. I mean, I still have it. That spark changed everything. That spark gave me the courage to start modeling. It wasn't easy. I reached out to boutiques and sent messages, but nothing happened. I worked with local groups and worked with new photographers, but opportunities were scarce. But I still tried, kept trying. And then a friend suggested I audition for Fashion Runway. At first I was like, what? No, me? On the runway? But later, I thought, why limit myself before I even try? So I practiced walking over and over again, and I signed up for audition. On the day of the audition, I walked into the room. It was a room full of tall, slim, professional models. My insecurities screamed at me. But I walked anyway. The organizers wanted us to walk in pairs. I did not know anybody, so I looked around the room, and there she was. She looked just like me. Not a size 2, not even a size 4, not a blonde, but just someone real. I introduced myself. She was a teacher who modeled for fun, and we agreed to walk together. For two strangers, complete strangers that just met, I thought we walked pretty well. We walk in sync, same pace, same turn, same pose. Honestly, I thought we nailed it. But the judges did not even look at us. They asked us to do it again, so we did. And still, they barely glanced their way to us. After we finished walking, they asked us to sit at a corner, waited to be measured. We waited. 30 minutes passed. Newcomers kept arriving, and they kept being sent before us. Round and around, we kept being shoved to the back. After about 30 minutes of waiting, we were called into the hallway, and that's when they asked us to leave because we're too big for them. I walked out frustrated. I went to a restaurant nearby, ordered 3 dishes of entree and some dessert. One dish was pretty spicy. So I was crying, sweating, fuming all at once. But that rejection lit a fire in me. I decided that no one should ever felt the way I felt that day. So I started organizing inclusive photo shoot with diversity as the centerpiece, because that is what true beauty looks like. I wanted to show that beauty has no age, size, gender identity, and cultural limit. And I kept walking runways too. Every time I stepped out, I felt pride, joy, and courage. Not because I was perfect, but because I showed up as myself. For me, modeling has become more than just fashion. It has become reclaiming my worth, celebrating my body, and giving others permission to do the same. Courage looks different for everyone, and it does not always look glamorous. If someone have told you that you are not enough, hear this. You are. Courage sometimes can mean showing up for yourself when you're being told no. Courage can sometimes mean believing in yourself when nobody else does. Sometimes courage can simply mean showing up as yourself, fully, authentically, as you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shi. Thank you for being you. Hey, can you stay up here? Can you stay up on the stage, Shi? Please. Can the other tellers join her on stage? I would like everyone to give them a big round of applause. Take a bow. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your stories. Yeah, very important. Yeah. Well, folks, that's the show. Thank you so much for coming. Don't forget about the Sunday event at 1 o'clock right here if you want to come see that. And maybe we'll see you next year for the same thing. Thanks for coming.